Alhamdulillah wassalawatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. What is the fiat standard? It is the monetary system that we are currently in. The word fiat is a Latin word that means let it be done, which, in other words, it means by someone with power, someone with authority, that action is done. So when I mean by authority, the authority refers to someone in power, such as a king, president, someone in government. It could also be the entire government. So fiat is represented through paper money and coins. So the paper money that you are familiar with, basically, there's dollars, there's euros, anything from whatever country you're in that looks like paper money with somebody's face or the numbers on the corner that tell you the value. This is basically it. And what this really is these are all just receipts. And I'll explain that further. So the paper money or metal coin, that object itself, is not what gives that money value. So you're thinking that the paper money, that dollar bill that you're holding, it's the material that you're using is not what gives it its value. But simply the value comes from the country that it's issued from, depending on the strength of that country. And we usually look at the strength of a country through its how much money it has, so its economics, as well as how much firepower it has, in other words, the military. So with these two combined, it pretty much gives the idea of how much the currency, the paper money, is worth. So where did this whole paper money system come from in the first place? Our earliest example from what we know came around Song Dynasty, so basically China. And it was basically started with merchants, and you can guess why, because at some point, no longer are trades being done in small communities. The merchants are growing in their business, therefore, they need to be transacting in larger amounts. So it says right here, to avoid having to carry thousands of strings of coins in long distances, merchants in Lake Tang times. So they started to trade receipts from deposit shops where they had left money or goods. So this is the earliest ideas of people replacing the gold with something that they could carry that represents the gold's value and that still can be traded with other merchants and other people among businesses. So again, the Chinese, they saw that gold had its problems. That if I want to increase my business, I have to do larger transactions. And I cannot be carrying around gold. There's a problem with transferability. You can be trying to move these large chunks of gold around. On top of that, there's security, because you're basically a walking target. So that's high maintenance. You got to do a lot of work to make sure that your gold is safe. And then on top of that, if you're doing different kinds of transactions, small transactions, really big transactions, really small transactions, you cannot expect somebody to be cutting small pieces of gold and then combining with other sizes, different sizes, even tinier sizes. Basically, there's a problem with the divisibility. Because if you're just doing one-to-one trading, or if you're in a small village, it can be understood why gold works. But when you're doing international trade, when you're doing trade with other countries, it comes up as a problem. So that's where paper money came in to solve that. So this prompted the replacement of the gold with something lighter and that meets the needs of the properties mentioned above, as I said, just transferability, divisibility, security. So this paper money and gold combination, this standard, began to expand over time. So again, like I said, no longer are trades being done in the hundreds, 400, 500s, all the way up to like thousands, 3,000, 5,000. By the time we were in the 19th century, even the 20th century, global trade, the Industrial Revolution, all that, global trade was reaching around the millions. So remember that the gold standard was there for thousands of years. However, once the Chinese invention of paper happened and started to have a paper gold combination, this binary gold standard is what made it survive all the way up to 1971. So basically, what would happen is uh, the world ran on a binary gold standard. The gold would stay at a reserve. So before banks, it usually, if you're in a kingdom, it would be with the crown, the king's treasury. Uh, while trade, meaning the people, the businesses out on the streets with other countries, that was being done mostly through paper money. And coins were still used. They were still had gold coins, and obviously were worth much more. If you were able to carry a good amount of gold coins, you could do that too. People were still doing that. However, it was not as popular as it was maybe 100 years prior to that. So paper money was the main source. Remember, we were still in the gold standard. We were still using the gold. Instead of just carrying the gold, I'll just leave it somewhere and use paper to represent that gold so I could do my trading. So I already told you in a previous gold video that the problems occurred when the reserve was trusted by people, especially politicians, kings, presidents, government people. So that's basically a problem. And throughout history, like I said in the previous video, throughout history, there's many events where this gold paper, gold to coin combination had its flaws. 1971. This is where we finally ended the gold standard. We stopped the gold standard and we entered the fully fiat standard. In other words, what basically happened is up until 1971, I explained to you that gold was replaced with paper money. Now it looks here that it's USD here. I explained in the previous video that USD was the primary currency to be used around the world that is going to be backed by gold. And this was the Bretton Woods Agreement, where all the other nations after the World War, they basically were in turmoil, economic turmoil, also infrastructure. Their whole country was destroyed with bombings. So US, being that it's across the ocean, it had its geographic advantage, and so it didn't really face as much damage. So it was the only superpower that was basically standing strong at the time. Therefore, its economy supported it being the main currency for the world. So I'll just explain that right here. So anyway, the world was using USD as the main driver for the other currencies, and the value of the USD came from the gold. So basically, gold, USD was backed by gold, and the rest of the currencies was backed by USD. But remember, this is the gold standard. And this is basically, before USD, it was the same thing. It was just gold, and then this entire thing would just be paper money. That's how it was. So after 1971, they basically took gold out of the equation, and it was just USD and the rest of the currencies. Now, technically, what was supporting the USD since they replaced the gold? It's the United States military power. To give you a quick example, for example, Saddam in Iraq or Gaddafi in Libya, they wanted to sell their oil in different currencies. The United States didn't allow that because if they start trading in other currencies, that's going to weaken the dollar, which is one of the biggest headaches, one of the biggest threats ever, because you threaten the money, you threaten everything else. And so what did they do? They went and attacked them. I'm not going to get too much into the politics of that, but I just gave you an example of what powers the USD. I like there's a term for it. For it, I mean, it's called proof of war. You can look at that in yourself. But that's a term that's used to kind of show where is the value of the USD comes from. It comes from the United States military. They threaten you with their very big, powerful military, and you have to submit to their will, which is accept the dollar, strengthen the dollar. So, again, what is a fiat system? It's where the paper money or metal is no longer backed by anything except just the authority, the faith, and the words of the United States or whoever's in power of that nation. So don't get it confused. It's not the paper money itself that you would say it's fiat. Paper money is just paper money. But a fiat system is once gold or anything that has actual value is taken out, and now you're asking the question, well, what is this backed by now? What is this piece of paper that's made out of just a tree? Is what is it backed by? It's backed by just a belief of whatever my government says. If my government says that this is worth $1, whatever that $1 means, it means it's $1. So I can go and find out what is worth $1 in exchange for that. So this is haram. Absolutely 100% haram. And we are living in it. We are just drowning in it. Nobody's saying anything. We just accept it. The fatwa is given that, oh, we have nothing better to do because the US is strong. We can't even do anything. And that's not an excuse because we no longer have an excuse. There's no rules to verify the fiat system. Nobody wanted, if you notice something, the fiat system just so happened to be created out of nothing. Nobody chose or nobody planned to think, yes, we're going to go to the fiat system after X amount of years, or no. It happened because, well, gold system no longer could be supported and eventually came to the fiat system. We trusted the gold to other people. That was the problem. So the fiat system it was given birth out of the mistrust and abuse of the gold system. And now we are living in the fiat system, and you can already see what's the problem. We cannot find any verification. We don't know the supply amount. And this is fully controlled by people in power. This is fully centralized. And you can see what problems we are having. I mean, there's a whole topic on fiat culture, fiat food, fiat education. I'll talk about that in another video, but you can see that our world has gone upside down even faster since 1971. And that's why I say, Alhamdulillah for Bitcoin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.